Alright, hello everybody. Let's look at one of the cornerstones of Rook Endgames, the Philidor position. In this position, with white to move, white's a pawn down, we have ways to throw the game away, ways to throw it hard way, and an easy way. And let's look at the easy way first. We do have to learn the hard way too, because sometimes you can't avoid that. You just end up there anyways. But here we have an option. And our option is to come here, cut the king in front of the pawn. So black can't go here or here. Our idea is to force black to move the pawn forward and then swing back. The point is to exactly avoid any kind of situation where the black king could threaten mates and be shielded from checks from behind by the pawn. Here black has options. He can keep checking us, but we just keep the king in front of the pawn. Gains nothing there. Can also maybe try like king runs around, but we have no way to, or we just have no reason to panic at this point. We can move the rook around on the third rank. He attacks our rook. We can swing around here. We can probably attack their pawn to keep the rook on the third file. So let's say, well, they could come defend the pawn. We can move the king, keep the rook on the third rank. If it checks us, we just keep the king in front of the pawn. Eventually, black can try stuff like run around, gives checks. But eventually he's gonna run out of options and has to push the pawn, which is what white wanted. And now we swing the rook back. And now there is no way to get the king in front of the pawn. He'll threaten mate, but we just keep giving it checks. A lot of checks. Can threaten the rook or the pawn. We can also keep giving checks. Black can, for instance, try to hide the king in this way. This is the only way to shield from the checks, but then we can just chop and go eat the pawn. So the beginning, the easy method of holding this when your king is in front of the pawn is to cut the king in front of the pawn, forcing him to, if he wants to make any kind of progress, to push the pawn forward and then swing the rook back and give a lot of checks. Here the hard method to draw it would be to put the rook behind the pawn. It's a big difference, and we'll look at that later on from the position where it was black to move. Here big mistake would be to give the check. Now black would threaten mate. We have few options to stop it. Coming to the back rank to stop it doesn't work because black swings the rooks around. Threatens the mate again. Only way to stop that is to run the king, but then you lose the rook and the game. That's no good. Other option would be to run, king runs around here, but then black checks you and runs the king forward. And now we needed the pawn to be attacked. And that's the difference between losing and drawing this position. And oh, sorry. Okay, let's say white try something like here. Stop the pawn. Black can check him away. push the pawn, defend the rook, and threaten promotion here. Now we can give a lot of checks, but the king can just zigzag towards the rook. And now the pawn just promotes. There's nothing to be done. Well, of course there's always the possibility of plundering the pawn away, but apart from that, it's done. But this is the easy way to draw it. This is the hard way. Let's look at this same position, but with black to move. Now it's black to move. The most... Oh, they can try the threaten checkmate, but then we can transpose into the easy method again. Same situation. We cut the king off. Establish the same position. But if black wants to be tricky, he comes here, keeping the options open. If white gives checks from this side, we push the pawn. If he gives the checks from this side, we hide under the pawn. So here, white has exactly one move to draw, and that is to attack the pawn from back. Alright, so here, black can for instance come here, threaten checkmate. And now white has to run. And in general, I think it's a good idea to run. Here, both ways still draws since it's the central pawns, but in general, I think it's a good way to go to the short side. The squares on this side than on this side. Just because if sometimes we need to have swing the rook to the side, and it's better to have a lot more checking distance there. Alright, so here black can give check, and now the point. This pawn is attacked, so black can't go here because we just take the pawn. So if he wants to push the pawn, he has few tries. Say first he sidesteps the king to run the pawn. We just come here. This is also an only move to draw this position. Card this square twice, so he comes here. We just check and bang, draw. Black gives a check. We go back here, and here you notice, oh, we're back where we began from. Again, run to the short side. Black can try to checkmate us again. We can give him a check and come back. Probably the easiest, always transpose back to the normal, where you know you can hold a draw. Or I can give you a check, but it's not getting anywhere. Okay, here he has here he has another try. The rook e1. Idea is to defend the pawn. X-ray defense. Now we want to move the king here and push the pawn to through. I think the easiest here is to threaten side checks. And again, you see there's no hiding room for black king. So black, I think the only way that makes sense is try to shield from the side checks. And then we could give that side checks. Still a drawing position, but I think the easiest is just to go back where we began. Preventing king e7, because bang. Black gives us checks. We run back there. Keep our rook on behind the pawn. It's all the same. We prevent this. I think it's the easiest always to try to establish the same basic defensive methods. Sometimes there's a lot of moves that do still hold the draw, but I don't know. I know it makes it a bit more complicated. If you can always transpose back to the where you began, it's always the best. And here in the this method applies to the central pawns, the bishop pawns, but against the knight pawns and the flank pawns, the rook pawns, you have a lot more flexibility. Let's see, look at the bishop's pawn. Again, same exact thing. Cut the king off. For hope that, well, try to force black to push the pawn eventually forward, and then we swing back and give a lot of checks. Okay, let's look at the bishop's pawn with black to move, because it makes a little difference. Here, same method as before. Side check's gonna fail because of c3. Threatening mate. So the only drawing method here is to go behind the pawn. Same exact situation. We run away. Threaten side checks. Tries to shield from them. We can again bring the rook behind the pawn. Run the king under the pawn if allowed. Black tries this. We come here. Stop this. Run the king under the pawn. Again, we can keep the rook behind the pawn. Again, same situation. Keep the rook behind the pawn as long as we can. Threatens mate, we run the king to the side. Here we can notice that in the beginning position, the bishop's pawn, it's still not possible to go for the passive defense because of c3. Now your rook can't leave the back rank without getting checkmated. So keep the rook on the back. And this is the point. Now again threatening mate. And if you try to hit the rook, there's the bishop's pawn, check. And pick up the rook. And winning easily. And why does this make a difference? Is that when we go to the knight's pawns. Again, you can do the cutting method. But with the knight's pawns, you have an additional option of going passive and just sticking the rook on the back rank. And now that doesn't make a difference what black does. We just swing the rook behind on the back rank. It can give you a check, go to the corner. And now there is, like with the bishop's pawn, there was a check, picking our rook up. But here, there's just nothing. We keep the king in the corner, and there's no way to drive us away from this method. We just keep the rook on the back rank. This works with the g pawns and the p pawns, the knight's pawns, so gives us more options. But you can also, if you want to show some skill, can establish this. Force black to push the pawn forward and then go for the checks from the behind too. works as well. And of course, same applies to the rook pawns, that you can use this method if you want to, but you can also, now it's the easiest one, you just stick the rook passively on the back rank, and whatever black does is just, obviously almost anything draws here too, but you can just swing the rook around on the back, keep the king in the corner and the rook here, and there's nothing black can do to make any kind of progress. Flank pawns usually are the hardest pawns to win with. You know that from the pawn endgames. Even without the rooks, we just keep the king in the corner, and there's no way to drive us away from there. So, Philidor's position to make your life a lot easier and a lot harder. You can draw by putting the rook behind the pawn. Threatens mate, we run. Black can try this. We threaten some side checks. Black can try to shield from them. We just come back. It's not that hard, but just forces you to sometimes find some very accurate moves. But yeah, sometimes you don't have any options, like if this was the black to move, he can force you to know the defensive method, and that is putting the rook behind the pawn. So we keep an eye on it, so we can deal with this situation by running and stopping this. For instance, if you started from the first position, here to give the check. Double question mark, instantly losing. E3. King D2. Rook F1. Ding, ding, ding. White tries the check here, we just go King D3. King D2. King C3. Little triangulation there. E2 threatening promotions. Attack the rook. Now there's no way to stop from going there. But we'll look at these positions later on from the winning side, trying getting the winning position, the losing position, how to win those. But it's as important as winning points is that how to save draws and not lose them theoretically drawn positions. Anyways, hope that was helpful, and bye bye.